Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to DG Chamber. Well, a virtual DG Chamber, if you would. I'm Lee Med, and this afternoon I'm delighted to welcome the Queen of Decluttering, the High Priestess of Cleansing. I think that's a good title, actually. I might just do that one. Put your hands together, please, virtually, and welcome Mel Carruthers. Mel, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm delighted that you are here and eager to actually get your input, your advice, and your support on something that I'm going to hold my hands up and say I am guilty of. I have stuff everywhere, not very organized, not what you want when you're working from home, when you're working in a space that really isn't what it's meant to be. And I think we've probably all been landed in the same situation with everything that's going on. So hopefully this afternoon we'll be able to get some tips, some understanding from yourself about what we can do to actually create some space and, more importantly, maintain it and control it.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I think that's quite a good anomaly for our times, isn't it? A space that's not what it's supposed to be. It could be applied to so many situations at the moment, but today we'll be looking at your home office, your working space at home, and your routines, and how we can make sure that we're all a little bit more organised in working from home, which is new to many of us, I know. So thank you everyone for coming today and for giving up an hour of your time. And thanks again to the Chamber for inviting me to share my experience. I never have to be asked twice to talk about organising, as Lee knows. I also wanted to recognise before we got started that in these extremely strange times, we're all handling things differently. I have industry colleagues who have stopped working for the time being. They're spending more time on home education, picking up new hobbies. I've got colleagues, people I know who are under a great deal of financial pressure, both for themselves and for their staff, and the stress that comes with that. I know some of us are a lot busier than we've ever been, and we're adjusting to new circumstances. And we're all handling this in different ways. So different ways emotionally, physically, financially. And so I'm just hoping that this hour can help sort of bring our experiences all together, and that we can share this hour to try and help each other a little bit. So I'm coming at this from a sense of positivity, really. So what gives me the experience, the credence, I suppose, to come in and tell you how to get more organised at home today? Well, in my previous career, I had 12 years of leading business development teams for international law firms in Dubai. And for most of that, I negotiated the ability to work from home 2 or 3 days a week, which was quite new in those times. And I made the point that I worked globally at that point, so it really didn't matter where I was, as long as I could help all of the teams that I was working with, and it worked really well. Before that, I was a museum curator in Aberdeen. I travelled all across the northeast of Scotland managing my collection, and that was in the days before we had iPhones, before we had proper internet. So that was home working of a completely different kind, but it taught me lots of skills that I use today. And now, of course, I run my own business. I've been working with my clients from home and from their homes for the last 3 years as I operate More Organised across the south of Scotland. So I did a quick tot up. I've been working from home for nearly 25 years on and off, which was quite terrifying, so we'll move on quickly. I can't see everybody else, but I know, Lee, you can. Can you just give a quick show of hands to people that have worked from home before?
Okay, let's see. If you have raised, if you
What are
have
we looking
been
like
working
in
from
terms of
home,
numbers?
raise your hand. You should be able to do that there. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got a 9, 10, 11, 12. We've got 12 in the room. People that have been working from home. So yeah, that's a good number that have had some basis, some experience of working from home. But I suppose, Mel, that might have been on a slightly less crazy state than we're currently in just now.
Absolutely, but I hope those people will feel free to share some of their experience with us as we move on. So today we'll be covering the challenges and the opportunities that we have from working from home at the moment. We'll be looking at your workspace and how to optimize that, make the most of it. We'll be looking at your routine and how we can make that work better for you. We'll be looking at finding your focus, because I know, especially on a sunny day like this, it's really difficult sometimes to find your focus, to get that motivation, especially when you don't have your usual team around you. And then we'll be looking at some tools and tips about managing your physical environment and your digital environment. And I'm hoping that this will bring us in under an hour, and there'll be time for some Q&A at the end. But I know Lee's going to be looking out for anybody that has got questions throughout the presentation. So do feel free to raise your hand or turn your screen yellow, or whatever it is that you need to do to let Lee know that you have a question. So we will crack on. So working from home, it's been what, 8 weeks now? So we all know what the challenges are. I think for many of us, our workspace is probably the main issue. Some people are lucky to have a dedicated study or office area in their home, maybe a guest room that they've been able to change into a home working space. But I'm aware that many of us are also sharing those spaces with other household members, and also with other functionalities. So even if you're using your kitchen table, for example, as your new desk, you're sharing that kitchen table with the need to prepare and cook food. It becomes a socializing space in the evening, a place to do hobbies, crafts, and also the dreaded home education. So I'm going to be sort of talking around our workspaces through all of these different functionalities, whether we're sharing them with other people or other functions. The equipment and supplies of the office are not readily available at home. Some of us will probably be working from laptops rather than your PC. We don't have the IT team down the corridor if anything goes wrong. I certainly don't have a big stationery cupboard where I can go and grab a new pen, or staplers when the staples run out. So that can be a bit of an issue as well. We've all got interruptions and distractions, whether that's children, the cat, the postman, and also those temptations. A nice sunny day, it might be that there's a TV show that you've always wondered what daytime TV was like, and all these things that are now piling on top of us as we start to look at getting our focus. Motivation can be a big thing as well. I know when you're not working regularly in a team, it can be really difficult if it's just you to find that motivation. And that's something we'll be looking at later on in the presentation. Stress levels are high. I know from experience that stress levels are high. We're all working with different levels of work than we did before, different situations, different surroundings, and that can make things even more difficult, as well as those added pressures that are on the outside, such as, what's going to happen? When are we going to go back to normal? What are my finances going to be like in 6 months' time? We've got lots of different levels of stress, and we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace about how we're handling all of that at the moment. Relationships are kind of coupled into that. So relationships at home with your household when everyone's a bit stressed, a bit sad, maybe missing people, but also those relationships with your work colleagues and with your clients. One of the main reasons I love what I do is my clients and spending time with them, and that's something that I miss on a day-to-day basis. I also miss my colleagues, other organisers around the country, and so it's difficult when events and things have had to be cancelled. But I would also like to make the point that these challenges can also be turned into opportunities. So we're not at work, but we also have no commute. I mean, personally, I'm not doing the school run and then the drive to a client every day. So I've got about 2.5 hours back into my schedule. And I'm sure that everyone on the call is finding that they've got that extra time. And what we do with that is a real opportunity here, I think. Whether it's using the commuting time to go for a walk in the morning, whether it's using the commuting time to spend more time with your family, other household members, or whether it's using that time to really set up your day, tackle the emails and the admin before you get started. And that's something that I'm doing here at More Organised. I'm an early riser. I get up about 6:15, and the rest of my family doesn't rise till about 8:30. So I've got a big chunk of time that I can use there in the morning to get ahead of all my emails, my admin, and plan my day. So I'm really actually enjoying that at the moment. Simplicity here, I think, we don't have all of that structure of the office and the workplace, but in turn that gives us more simplicity to really focus on what we're doing ourselves to move towards goals in our work, whether it's working for other people or working for our own business. We've got more freedom here, I think, to be really forging our own way and to be showing people what it is we're capable of doing. We're more flexible. We don't have to work 9 to 5 now in many circumstances. Obviously, everyone's workplace is different, and what your teams at work are telling you or working to is going to vary from person to person. But many of us are not now tied to that 9 to 5. So it means we can look more at our own personal rhythms and when we're working better and when we want to have a bit of downtime and use that for exercising or time with the rest of the household. Motivation can also be turned on its head here. So I think that given what I've said so far about that simplicity, that focus, that freedom, we can motivate ourselves in different ways now, and that certainly is an opportunity. We've got time to focus on health and well-being. We can take that daily exercise now more than once a day, but there's certainly more flexibility here to build that into our working day. Relationships appears here as an opportunity as well as a challenge. What better time to really show your spouse, your children, your other household members what it is you do every day and what's important to you in terms of your work. So it's really giving us the chance to get more understanding about what it is that drives us in our workplace and what it is that we're doing. And I'm really enjoying that and using that that opportunity to show my 9-year-old, how to plan your day and how to learn some of these techniques and tips that I'm going to be talking about later in the presentation. And I think above all, it's trust with our employers, with our clients, with the government. This is a huge social experiment, which we never would have been able to do otherwise, where we can really be showing what we can achieve through working in a different way, so that we're not all driving to work every morning at the same time and clogging up the roads and causing traffic jams and pollution and all these different ways that we are keeping the country going. But with the trust of those people that maybe before weren't quite so keen on the concept of working from home. So those are the opportunities that I see, and I think this is something I'd like you to bear in mind as we're going through the webinar this afternoon. And I'd be really interested to hear what you think at the end as well about what opportunities you've seen as you've changed your working time. So the most obvious place is your workspace, making it work for you. I think we need to have certain boundaries in place when we're setting up our workspaces. Now, we've had 8 weeks of working from home now, maybe longer for some people. And I'm sure we've all felt sort of guilty to tapping out a few emails from the sofa in front of the TV, that we've been not so good at having those boundaries set. But I think by now we're all seeing that having a dedicated area for your work makes the most sense, not just for you and what you're doing, but also for the other household members. It's important that we look at comfort and health when we're choosing where to work from. The desk height needs to be right for you, the chair height, so that you've got the right posture. If you're not sure, there are plenty of resources on the internet to make sure that the chair and the desk that you've chosen are the right height for you, and that you're not going to end up with any back problems after this is all over. So do check those. Natural light is also really important. I know it's not always easy, but if you can have your table, your desk by a source of natural light, you are going to be much better on your eyes, you know, avoiding headaches, migraines, etc. But also you'll look much better on a Zoom call. So we don't want to have lots of dark shadows. We want to see the real people. So natural light, bring your computer screen up, even if it's just for the call, so that it's looking straight at you. Equipment can be tricky. Obviously you've all got computers, otherwise we wouldn't be here on the Zoom call right now. But it's other things like printers, scanners, even down to stationery and extra staples. It can make it a bit more difficult if you suddenly run out of things. So I think a good thing to do after this call would just be to have a look around you and make sure that you've got everything that you need. And if you've got a stapler there, but you don't know where the spare staples are, pop it onto your shopping list for the next time you go out to Tesco's. Make sure that you've got everything available to you, and if possible, that you're not sharing that with the kids and their homework, with your other half and their work, so that you've all got your own little stash of what you need to make life efficient and easy for you in your working day. And the same goes for paperwork and storage. You need to have it all to hand, but somewhere where you can keep it out of the way in the evening. You know, we need to go back to those boundaries again that I was talking to about the work area, that you have a life as well. You know, it's not just work, work, work. You need to have boundaries so that when the working day is over and you're turning to leisure time or making supper or just flopping out in front of the TV, that the paperwork and the storage and the laptop aren't just sitting there staring at you. So you may want to put them in a cupboard, or have a box that you can just pop everything in and put it under the table. Just think of a way that you can get all of that out of your way, but so that you can also bring it out easily the next morning when it's time for work again. Above all, I think about what worked for you in the office. What were you, a tidy desk person? Were you somebody that shared your stationery with other people? Did you like to have everything locked away and a clean desk policy? Just keep trying to make that work and replicate it at home if you can. So we'll talk a little bit more about specifics of paperwork organising later on, but I just wanted to take some time to look at the routine as well, because this is really the key to your success. Structuring your day is just as important, if not more important, than it was when we were all working back in an office. It may be back then that other people had more control over the structure of your day, but now it's in your hands. If you need to speak to your teams, to your management about meetings or Zoom calls, or having them at a time that makes more sense to you in your new routine, then feel that you can do that. You know, a lot of these meeting times are arbitrary and could have been taken from, you know, just trying to keep things going on as normal. But if a 10 a.m. Monday doesn't work for you anymore, it probably doesn't work for other parents, because they're probably all getting to grips with the weekly education program as well at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. So bring it up with your team and with your manager and see if there's any room there to move that. It doesn't always have to be exactly the same as it did before. Coordinate your structure with your household. I know here at More Organised HQ, it's not just me working and running a business. My husband's running his business with clients across the globe. And my son is now at home from school, and so we're having to tie in the home educating as well. If I just, you know, went on and structured my day how I wanted to run it, then we would all fall down. So we need to all coordinate together at the beginning of the week and the beginning of each day, just to check in with each other and make sure that we can all be there to support each other when we need to. I know it's easier said than done, but it gets easier every week. Take regular breaks. It's really important that your work doesn't become your everything when you're at home. when you were in the office, you probably had, you know, chances to go and grab a coffee, speak with colleagues as you walk past their desk, pop into somebody else's office, you know, with that, have you got a minute? I want to run something past you. They were all breaks, even though you were at work. And I think there's a big danger now that we're working on our own in front of our laptops, that we can just be ploughing on regardless. It's not good for our creativity, it's not good for our energies, and it's not good really in terms of just keeping this as a long-term situation, which is really where we're going to be heading, I think. So take regular breaks, you deserve them, and it's going to make your efficiency much better. Probably some of you on the call have heard of the Pomodoro technique, which I really love. The basis of that technique is that you set a timer. The original guy that invented it had one of those tomato timers, kitchen timers, which is why it's called the Pomodoro technique. He'd set that for 25 minutes and really get engrossed in that task, just really commit to doing that task, whatever it is, for 25 minutes. And when the buzzer goes off at 25 minutes, you have a 5-minute break or a 5-minute change of tack, maybe answer an email or go and make a coffee. So by doing this regular repetition of 25 minutes immersed in a task and then 5 minutes switching focus, you can really get a lot more done, and it really helps with that attention span, which we're told by psychologists that is 20 to 25 minutes. If you do anything for more than 25 minutes, it can be a bit difficult to keep that motivation going. So the Pomodoro technique is great if you need regular breaks and you work well in that way. Understand your natural rhythm. So I spoke about this a little bit earlier. I'm a morning person. I work much better in the morning. Late at night, not so good. Afternoons, I have a big dip. Understand what works for you and when your best, most focused parts of the day are, and try and work your daily structure around that if you can. This wasn't so easy when we were all working 9 to 5 in an office, but now you've got the freedom to really take more note of those natural rhythms and to make it work better for you. Mix it up. If you've got a report to write, don't spend the whole day writing the report. Mix it up with a few emails, a few phone calls, get some social connectivity there, maybe a Zoom meeting, and make sure that you're mixing your day up as much as you possibly can, so you're not getting you know, plugged down into something that doesn't give you motivation. This is your chance to build your day as you want to build it. And don't forget your personal brand and presentation. How many of us have been on Zoom calls in the last couple of months where there's been somebody, you know, taking the call from the sofa or in bed? I've had one where somebody was literally in bed. You know, I'm glad that Lee's wearing a shirt and tie there. I hope there aren't any other of the attendees that are in bed, because I don't want to offend anybody. But your personal brand and your presentation is still as important today as it was 2 months ago when you were phoning clients from the office. So dress accordingly. By all means, if you know you haven't got any client calls that day, you know, be a bit more comfortable. But generally, we are just as reliant on our personal branding now as we ever were, and so it makes sense to dress accordingly. I think it's also really helpful in, again, setting those work and home boundaries if you put your work clothes on. I think it's really helpful if you get into that work frame of mind by putting on something that you probably wore for work, and then at the end of the day, when you finish work, go and put your, you know, your comfy clothes on, go out for a walk or whatever. But don't underestimate the ability of your clothing and your presentation to set the tone for your day. So again, what worked for you in the office in terms of your routines, just magnify that and make sure that that is replicated at home. So another way to really make sure that you've got your focus is to pay attention to where your time is going. Again, there were certain structures in the workplace that helped you with this without you realizing it, but now you're on your own. You may need to track your time a little bit better and just get some understanding of what you're actually doing with it. Social media is a huge time waster. Now, many of us need social media to run our businesses. But it's easy if you're scheduling a couple of social media posts to then get caught by something a friend is saying and then go off down that funnel, and then an hour later you realize that you should have been working. So be really intentional with your social media time. Set timers for how long you're going to use it. Batch up your social media work so you do it all in one go. Use schedulers. There are plenty of services out there such as Later or Hootsuite that can help you schedule your social media posts. And just really pay a bit more attention to what you're doing with it and learn to be a bit more intentional. So track, schedule, and plan your social media. Procrastination is the big one. I'm guilty of this as much as the next person. Try and take breaks and break your tasks down into smaller chunks. So if on your to-do list it says website refresh, I know a lot of my clients are refreshing and updating websites at the moment because they've got time to do it. Break it down into smaller chunks and therefore focus really on a page at a time, for example, or a particular call to action on your website at one time. And that will help you to get over that procrastination and get something done. And the more you can start seeing these smaller tasks being ticked off, it gives you that energy and enthusiasm to keep on going with the rest. Just make a start. Sometimes just getting started is the hardest thing. Again, that Pomodoro technique I was talking about is really good for just making a start. If you really don't want to do something, set the timer for 25 minutes and just see how much you can get done. And very often that's the kickstart that you need to get into a task. And give yourself a reward, whether that's a walk down the road, or it's a break for a coffee, or a phone call to a friend. If you put these rewards into your day, it's going to help you overcome the procrastination bug. Poor task management can also be an issue. I think if you are switching from one task to another and not getting any real focus there in your working day, it can make it really difficult to overcome the procrastination and to get back into the working scheme of things again. So batch your tasks together. Spend an hour doing all of your emails, or spend half an hour planning your next social media posts all together, so you're not jumping from one task to another. So here is how I batch my tasks. I try and batch everything so that I set this into my diary weeks ahead. So I know that from 6:30 till 8 every morning, I'll be doing my emails and admin. I know the next hour is breakfast. I know that for half the week, my morning is going to involve some element of home education, and the rest of the half of the week, it's my husband doing that. I know that lunch and a bit of housework and a reset of the house is at 1 o'clock. I know that I have lots of working time in the afternoon, and that we have our daily Boris walk around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I know that supper is always roughly the same time, and I know that I have time in the evening for particular tasks that I want to do. So batching your time in this way and forward planning it can really help, so that you're not jumping between tasks unless you really have to because of urgency. So I think an important thing to remember is that we can't manage our time, but we can manage our focus. Time is always going to be 60 seconds is always going to be 60 seconds. An hour is always going to be 60 minutes. But we can manage our focus, and in that way we can get more done. So as I've said, track your time. There are plenty of apps and software out there, or you can just use a good old-fashioned pen and paper to write down what you're doing over a week, and then see how you might be able to batch some of those tasks together. Use that time blocking and task batching to set your diary so that you know what's coming up and you know when you can work on a particular activity. Habit stacking is also really helpful in terms of this. So if you know that you like to make a phone call while you've got a nice cup of coffee, go and get your cup of coffee, and then you'll start getting into the habit of always making the phone calls when you've got that cup of coffee in your hand. And then you know that you'll always do your emails to follow up those calls straight after them, and get into that habit of stacking. And diarise your tasks in preparation. We're all quite good at diarising what we need to do in terms of finalising a report or writing a web page, but the preparation time needs to be diarised as well. So if you know that you've got to write a report, you could have that 10-minute research time and call with your manager before you get that report started, and plan that into your diary as well. I used to tell my clients to plan in their travel time for this as well, but obviously that's not quite so relevant at the moment. But everything you need to do to achieve that task should be put in your diary, not just the deadline. And then a weekly power hour. This is one of my favourite bits of the week, where I like to review what I've achieved in the week. I like to think briefly about how I could have done it better or what I would do differently next time. I look at the appointments and deadlines I have coming up for the next week, even things like birthdays and particular phone calls that I need to make, and put that all together into my weekly to-do list and the weekly diary that you've just seen, and do that every week on a Sunday evening. And I call it my power hour, and it really sets me up for the week. Obviously you don't need to do it on a Sunday evening, you can do it whenever you like, whenever you have a free hour, but just get into the habit of doing it once a week, and that will really set you up for success and for having more focus, I think, for the week. The other thing I like to do is my 1-3-5 method, and I really think this is where the magic happens. I think especially at the moment when we're different from our teams and we're working in different places, we have huge long to-do lists. Some of them times they might be mixed with home and with work, and it can be all very overwhelming, just have a massive long list of things that you need to do. So I like to use the 1-3-5 method. I have my master to-do list of everything that I need to do, but within that, I focus on what I can achieve each day. It works well with time blocking, and really what it is to pick the one most important thing that you have to achieve that day. That's number one. Then I write down the next 3 things that I need to do that day. And then if I've got time, I'll write down the next 5 things that would be really good to do that day or to make a start on. So this is what mine looks like. Excuse the handwriting. So number 1, for today, this is a real live version of today. Number 1, the most important thing I had to do today was run through these webinar slides for the webinar. The next 3 things that I need today are to schedule some blog posts, reply to a client, and prepare for a call I have with one of my organisations this evening at 8 o'clock. Then the 5 things that if I've got time, poor old mum, she's on a number 5, not a number 1. Number 5, a few fun things in there as well. If I've got time, I want to call my mum, plant some plants, prepare the accounts for a call with my accountant tomorrow, email 3 clients just to check in and say how are they, and then I want to tackle my filing if I can today. So that's a 1-3-5 list in action. You can see it's not everything I have to do, but it's the 1, 3 and 5 things I want to do today, and then I do this every evening for the next day. So that was some of my routines and some of my focus and motivation tips. But now I want to turn back to some tips for your physical environment and to really make sure that it's working best for you. And before we go on to that, I just want to say that at the moment, some of us may not be quite so busy as we usually are. We've certainly got more flexible time, like we've been speaking about. And it's a really good opportunity to take stock of your physical environment, whether that's the filing or your systems or even where you place your desk in the room. We've got time now to really look at things from a different point of view. I'm a huge believer in the tidy desk, tidy mind saying. I know others may not be, and I've worked with some brilliant lawyers in my career who've got the messiest desks and offices you've ever seen, and they've been brilliant and they've managed just fine. But for me, a tidy desk definitely equals a tidy mind. So I like to tidy up my desk every evening when I'm finished, even though it's my dedicated space and I don't use that desk for anything else. I hate coming into the office the next morning just to see piles of stuff and, you know, everything I left yesterday. So a tidy desk can really set you up for some success. So have a look at how you're using that space and the drawers underneath it and how you might want to change that. Think about your equipment as well as your papers. So this is especially true if you're working from the dining table or you're sharing a desk with somebody else at the moment. your papers and your equipment should be tidied away at the end of the day. So a cupboard, a desk, boxes, just think about where you can put them and where you can move them out of the way, so that they're clear and they're not hampering everybody else's evening or weekend as well. Filing is really important. We'll look at that in a minute. And a daily reset, not just tidying everything away, but really looking at what you need for tomorrow. What's going on tomorrow? What do you need to have available for tomorrow, so that you've got everything set up.
Oh, I think we've lost their Mel for a second. We'll see if we can get her back. In the meantime, of course, you are part of this DG Chamber webinar. Thank you all very much for taking your time out of the day and being part of this. We've got lots of you in the room, lots of questions coming in, so we will get these over to Mel. At the end of this webinar, we'll take all those questions there. If you do have a question you want to put to Mel, you can just drop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or of course you can raise your hand. We'll get you on the chat box, or even then we can take your emails at lee.med@dgchamber.co.uk. So lots of you are doing that, which is absolutely fantastic. We're just seeing if we can get Mel back. Let's see here. Okay. All right, let's just, I believe Mel has had some trouble with her internet over the past couple of days. And I think a lot of us have had that as well. It's been a case of working from home has put some extra strain on the network and the network capacity, certainly in some parts of Dumfries and Galloway. So we'll see what we can do with this for just a second.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
You're back. There you are. Good.
I'm back.
I was having to do something that we call technical and fill, but I think we covered it. I think we got away with it. So that's not too bad. Cheers, Mel.
Well, you're a pro, so thank you very much. I am now trying to find my screen to share. Can you still see it?
We can still see where we were before. Tools and tips, your physical environment.
Right. Okay, I can't see it now, so let me get back to it. There we go. Can you still hear me and see me and everything?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay, so what I was saying was about filing, paperwork. We don't need lots of fancy equipment for this. Obviously, it'd be really lovely for stationery addicts like me to use this as an excuse to run down to Ryman's or Paperchase or whatever your favourite stationer is. But you can pull out anything that you've got around the house for your filing. You know, box lids, cereal boxes, old folders that you might have. Be creative. Or, you know, you can always order things online. But we don't know how long this situation is going to last. So just be quite inventive as to what you need, I suppose, for your filing. So for incoming, you need a tray or a box so that everything that's coming into your desk, which hopefully will be a little less now that you're working from home and not in the office, put all your incoming things, your notes, whatever, into your tray or your box labeled incoming. Then your work in progress. So that's all your current work, your projects that you're working on, the reports you're writing, the sales sheets that you need to review. Pop those into separate folders, files, or plastic pockets for each task that you're working on. That way you can dig out the ones you need for your working day and leave everything else quite happily tucked away in its in progress box or filing cabinet if you're lucky to have one. Your outgoing papers, so that's post, it's things that need to be scanned over to a colleague, pop them into a tray or a box for outgoing. And then the big one, the stuff that you need to keep that you finish working with. Now, I think we're all pretty guilty of keeping every bit of paper just in case we might need it. But the reality is that we don't need everything. You know, probably 80% of the time we're using the same 20% of papers. So be really ruthless before you start filing.
So I'm just going to jump in there for a second.
Yeah.
We've lost your screen. You've lost your slides, just in case you were sharing. I know you had some internet issues there, just in case you need to restart.
Oh, but you can still hear me. Yeah, I'm
And
going to
still,
reshare.
yeah, still seeing. See, we just have lost your slides there. But there we go. That's it coming back on. Fantastic.
Okay. So I'm slightly ahead of myself on the slides now, but never mind. So in terms of your filing, if you keep the categories really broad for your filing, if you, for example, have insurance as a category, and then you can have subfolders or little poly pockets, plastic pockets, each type of insurance or for each policy, so that you're not being overwhelmed by hundreds and hundreds of tabs in your filing. You've just got very generic names filed alphabetically so that you can find things really easily to start with. So with your filing, file weekly. Even if you hate it, try and file weekly, maybe at the end of the week or first thing, beginning of a new week, and review that regularly. So if I'm filing a document, I'll have a quick look through what's in the rest of that section and use that as a prompt to really shred or get rid or scan what's in there. Always file in alphabetical order. It makes so much more sense and means that you know, if you're not looking for something, if somebody else is, they can find it easily as well. Keep your categories broad, as I said. It's easier to then subcategorize within those broader categories. So just cover that. So in terms of your physical environment, I think that's the main thing. It's a place for everything and everything in its place. And your digital environment is not that much different. Always try and keep personal and work separate. I know it's hard when you're probably using one computer, one laptop, but by having two separate folders for personal and work, they're not going to get mixed up and it will make life a lot easier for you. Digitize documents where you can. So I remember when I was at school, probably about 13 or 14, and we kept being told that in the future, when you're all at work, there won't be any paper because of the way that computers are coming on. What a load of rubbish. I actually think that computers have generated more paper for us to file, and therefore it's something that can really quickly override your workspace, especially if you're at home. You haven't got as much space, you haven't got corporate filing cabinets lining the corridors to put all of this stuff in. So where you can, scan it. There's loads of really good scanning apps that we can even use on our phones these days if we don't have scanners and printers at home, but try and digitize where you can. Tackle the emails. So your email inbox. I'm wondering if anybody on the call wants to volunteer and tell us how many emails they have roughly in their inbox at the moment.
All right, if
Any
anybody,
volunteers?
because I'm having a quick look at mine here. I currently have 293 unread emails that I need to go through.
Yeah.
1008 as well I have here to my right. Do I have any advances on
Any advances on
1008? No, definitely. Yeah, 1008 is our top as it sits in our unread emails just now, Mel.
So your emails, they're not doing anything by sitting in your inbox in red. You know, if you're unlucky enough to be the 1008th email all the way down there at the bottom of your inbox, you're not really going to be looking at it. So finding out systems that work for you to tackle your emails so that you can work towards having, you know, that zenith of digital organization, you know, the email inbox zero is what I aim for at the end of the week. So I'm really honest with myself. If I know that I'm not going to get to something, I'll move it into a different folder so it's not overwhelming me when I open up my laptop the next day. There are some really simple things you can do to tackle your emails. You can unsubscribe from lists. You can move emails automatically into different folders as they come in by setting up different rules for your inbox. So anything that you know is coming from your accountant that you don't need to read every time it comes in, it can just all go into an accounts folder, and then when you're working on your accounts and you need to look at that information, you can go into your accounts email folder and dig it all out. There are certainly some IT providers apps that say that they clear out a lot of your mailing list emails, you know, not just the spam, but the emails that come from different shops and retailers and services that you might want to unsubscribe from. I would always recommend doing that yourself by clicking on the unsubscribe from list option at the top of the email or at the bottom of that proprietary text from the emailer. If you use something like Unroll Me, even though they promise to unroll you from all of these subscriptions, in reality, they don't actually do that. They just put your email into a different folder that you can't see. And the rumors are for some of these services that they then actually go on to sell your data to other people anyway. So be really wary of these automated unsubscribe services and try and do it yourself, either from the top or the bottom of the email. I use my inbox as my to-do list. So if it's not something that I know I'm going to do or that I know I need to do, it gets filed, it gets deleted. Back in the day when I had a team, it was delegated. But I only keep emails in my inbox if I know I need to do something with them. And I always delete my deleted folder, email folder permanently at the end of each working week. So that helps as well. So you're not seeing all those little blue numbers that haven't been opened shrieking at you. And the thing is, with an email, if you miss something, if you don't reply to something, the person that sent it is going to get in touch with you anyway and say, hey, Mel, did you get that email? Or did you see that question I sent you last week? They're always going to come back to you. So it's not the end of the world if you delete something that you didn't need to or mean to. I could speak for ages about tackling the emails, but that's something that we could perhaps save for another day. Document organizing and photo organizing in your digital environment are very, very similar. I know with the ease that we can generate documents and photos these days that we're all overwhelmed with them. Again, a really substantial filing structure that works for you is the key to keeping everything organized. If you know somebody's emailed you a document that you need to keep, right click on it and save it in the folder straight away. Don't leave it there in your inbox thinking you'll get round to it later. If something takes, 5 seconds or less to do, just do it, and it will save you so much more stress in the long term. Or you could save all of your documents to be filed in a particular folder in your emails for the end of the day, or to that block of time that you set aside in your diary management, and then do them all at once. But try and come up with some kind of system so that you're not letting important documents fill up your inbox. I know a lot of us, especially with photos, have photos on all kinds of different media around the house, around the office, and it can get a bit overwhelming in terms of knowing where everything is. If you use your computer as a hub to collect all of that information together, and then you can easily see what's duplicated, delete what you don't need, and then file. It can look overwhelming to start with, but I think if you realize that this situation built up over probably some quite length of time, you're going to have to spend some length of time trying to sort it out. So don't feel that you have to sort it all out in one day or you failed. Even batch tasking by doing 10 minutes of digital filing every morning before you start work is going to make huge steps and progression towards clearing that overwhelm in a few weeks' time. If you'd started doing it at the beginning of lockdown, 10 minutes a day, just think the situation that you could be in by now with everything neatly filed away. There are loads of apps and software that can help you with your digital organizing and managing your day and your time. We're using one now, Zoom, which not many of us were using 3 months ago, and this is now our day-to-day normal. Ask some of your colleagues, friends, contacts what software they're enjoying using at the moment and what works for them, and that way you can start exploring different ways to be more efficient with your digital work. I know one that I'm exploring at the moment is called If This Then That, and it's a really snazzy app. I don't know if anybody's used it, but if you're doing the same tasks again and again on your computer, you can set up rules across lots of different platforms and apps. So if you're doing one thing, it triggers a set of actions on your computer. So for example, if I schedule a meeting, then I can set the app to send automatically an email to my husband to let him know that I won't be able to do home education on that day and that time because I'll be at this meeting, and it will also schedule the Zoom call for me to attend that meeting, all at the click of a button. So have a look at If This Then That, it's really cool. There are loads of other systems as well, which we all have the time really now to look at and to play around with and to experiment with, and see how they might be able to help our digital working day. So that's it really, some of my top tips. I feel that I brushed through a lot of things very, very quickly, realising that we only had an hour today, but I'm really, looking forward to hearing some questions or some tips that other people on the call use that we can share to help us keep more organised.
Mel, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I've got notes galore in front of me just now.
What are you going to do with them?
What I'm going to do with them, I'm going to work my way through them in an organised manner, and then I'm going to action them. And once they're done, I'm going to put them away so I know it's done, dusted, and taken care of. But just a few of these things that have been noted, and a few of the questions that have been coming in, relating around that organisation, that block organising that you were talking about. Now, you were obviously very well organised. You were using a digital diary. You're using, I think it was an Outlook diary or something like that.
Yeah, just Outlook, basically.
What works better, digital or paper? Is there benefits of one over the other?
I think there are benefits to both. And to be honest, I use both. I mean, my Outlook calendar is where I have the detail of every single day. Now, a lot of those, as you saw, were exactly the same every day. The email and admin time was always the same. The daily Boris walk was always the same, etc. So I don't put those in my paper diary, but something that's a one-off that I need to remember goes into my bullet journal as well. And that's what I, in the old days, used to carry around in my handbag with me all the time, I don't even know where my bag is right now. So I think it really depends on what you prefer as a person. I think one of the easiest ways to get disorganized and muddled up is to be using a system because somebody told you should, rather than using it because it's what works for you. And that means that we have to try different ways of doing things. But once you find something that works, stick with it. I think there's a lot of temptation there to be using IT when sometimes a paper diary just works perfectly as it is.
You said that if you do have a lot of files, a lot of folders on your desktop and you try to get them organised, best thing to do is be very generic and then work your way backwards. I've had somebody come in here and ask what happens if you have lots of those folders over different mediums. Also, they have duplicates of those files. Is there an easy solution to actually get them all into one place, keeping the most recent one and losing all the duds or the duplicate files? And I think we're all guilty of having that because, again, we've jumped from the office with stuff. I'll just stick it on a pen drive. I'll use this for a presentation. And then we've got 64 million copies of it. Is there an easy answer for that one?
It's a fairly simple answer. I won't say it's easy because it doesn't happen overnight, but what you need to do is gather up all of those different pen drives, the different disks, the different, the phones, the BlackBerry, whatever you're using, and use one of those devices, probably your laptop or your desktop PC, as the hub. So once you've got this hub together, bring all the other documents. At this stage, copy them, don't move them, just in case you lose something. Copy all of the documents over to your hub, and then once they're all together, start organizing them, and then you can see what the duplicates are. And if you view your folders by the data rather than the title, you'll be able to see the dates and the times, and from that you'll be able to work out which is the most recent, which is usually what we need to keep. Sometimes not always the case, but to keep the most recent or the most appropriate version of that file and delete all of the rest. While you're doing this, make sure that you've got good backup systems in place as well, and that your work is always being backed up, because the worst thing at this point, where we may not be hooked onto work networks, is that we might lose data. You've already seen how my internet is not the most stable in the county. So make sure you've got a good backup system while you're doing any of this, and keep keep on with it as well.
And
There are also some really good apps that can discover duplicates for you automatically. Now, I'm not going to recommend one over another because there are different ones for photos and for files, and it depends on your circumstances. But a quick Google will show you that there are lots of software applications, many of them free, that can identify duplicates for you and then give you the option as to which ones you keep and which ones you delete. But it takes a lot of the legwork out of that for you as well.
I think Sarah Colbeck has been in touch here as well. She's echoing what you said. She said, keep those broad categories and be ruthless. And I think that's what many of us are so scared of. We're scared of, as you say, deleting the wrong thing and then thinking, oh, I need to go back to the one three versions ago because the wording on that was perfect or something like that. But she's echoing your sentiments. Be ruthless, file weekly, and always do that review. And I think that's for a lot of us going to be the things we do take away from us today. And again, having to get that division between work and personal life. If we get that right, it's going to allow us, as you said, so much more opportunity, not just in our personal life, but in our work life as well. What would we do with that extra, what is it, an extra hour and a half a day, times that by 5? It's, well, let's face it, it's at least 3 Hallmark movies, isn't it?
I like your style.
Mel, thank you so much for taking the time. Of course, you've got loads of great hints and loads of great tips on all your social feeds, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I maybe haven't been paying quite so much attention to my socials in the last few weeks because I'm quite busy, but there's a lot of information on the blog and Facebook and Instagram as well, More Organised.
Mel, thank you so much for taking the time today. We're definitely going to be doing more of these in the future with yourself, and because I feel we can be doing some more around that email organising, that photo organising. As you mentioned, it's very much a session in itself. Of course, if you've enjoyed today, we'll have more of our great DG Chamber webinars coming up over the next few days. We have one coming your way on Friday with the guys from Quibity. We're going to be talking about remote networking. We're going to be talking about digital dilemmas and a whole lot of other stuff. We've got one next week with Westfield Health, and then we're going to be looking at your brand and your website with Simon and the guys from Hoggett Creative. But for DG Chamber, I'm just going to say thank you very much one more time to Mel Carruthers, the queen of decluttering. You can find out more about Mel and everything else she does if you have any other questions by going to the website www.moreorganized.com. Mel,